I always believed that my life was like a book with predictable pages. At 27, my days as an elementary school teacher were filled with homework assignments, parent meetings, and genuine smiles from the kids. My small apartment in the quiet Westwood neighborhood matched my modest salary just fine. Mom lived only a few blocks away, and on weekends we'd make the famous cinnamon cake we inherited from Grandma together. That March morning, the Evergreen Cafe was especially crowded. I was grading papers and sipping a steaming chai latte when a tall man accidentally knocked his laptop onto my papers. Amidst awkward apologies and frantic attempts to save my soaked tests, William flashed a smile that sent my stomach into flips. "Let me buy you another chai and maybe dinner to make up for the mess." I hesitated at first. Relationships weren't on my immediate agenda after the disaster with Alex the previous year, but there was something genuine in William's blue eyes, a sincerity I hadn't seen in a long time. Our first date was at a casual little restaurant. William talked about sustainable architecture, his passion for social housing projects, and how he loved creating spaces that transform communities. Not a word about his family, just a few comments about his cozy apartment and his work at an architecture firm. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this. 6 months passed in the blink of an eye. Every moment with William revealed a new layer of connection between us. He would show up at the school with coffee and muffins after my late meetings. He helped my students with their model projects. He'd chat with my mom about gardening while I made dinner. The school trip to the aquarium had been planned for months. My third graders were practically bursting with excitement in the preceding weeks. William volunteered to chaperone, something he'd done a few times before. "Miss Brooks, can we see the penguins first?" Sophie asked, tugging my sleeve as we walked through the massive entrance hall. Something felt different that day. My 23 students were whispering more than usual, exchanging secret looks. Even the aquarium coordinator seemed nervous when she greeted us. In the underwater tunnel, surrounded by turquoise waters and sea creatures gliding above our heads, I lost sight of William for a moment. The kids led me to a central area where colorful schools of fish swam in perfect circles. Suddenly, a diver appeared on the other side of the glass, holding a sign that read, "Emma Brooks, you changed my life." My heart raced when I recognized William under the diving suit. He flipped the sign over and it read, "Will you marry me?" My students erupted in joyful screams, revealing t-shirts tucked under their coats with the words, "Say yes." When I turned around, there was William on one knee, holding an open little box that revealed a simple ring with a tiny sapphire. The first time I set foot in the Thompson mansion felt like stepping onto another planet. The uniformed driver, the immaculate gardens, the imposing structure that looked more like a museum than a home. William shook my hand, noticing my surprise. "I should have told you earlier. My family has a bit of means." A bit of means was the understatement of the century. The Thompson family controlled one of the country's largest business conglomerates. Their real estate, tech, and financial empires explained why the name vaguely rang a bell from economic headlines. Robert Thompson didn't even get up when we entered the library. His cold eyes sized me up as if I were a defective item at an auction. His perfectly combed gray hair, tailored Italian suit, and a watch that probably cost more than 5 years of my salary said it all. "So you're the teacher?" It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. The conversation went downhill fast. Robert talked about William as if he wasn't even there. He questioned my limited career plans and my lack of significant connections. My modest background clearly bothered him more than any personality trait. "Before we get into the formalities of marriage," Robert said, sliding a step folder across the mahogany table, "we need to discuss some safeguards. The prenuptial agreement was absurdly unfair. Clauses that would leave me with nothing if the marriage ended before 10 years, restrictions on inheritance even if we had kids, and limitations on my access to family assets." "Dad, this is ridiculous," William protested, his face turning red with anger. I grabbed the pen before William could say another word. "Where do I sign, Mr. Thompson?" For the first time, Robert's expression faltered. "I'm not interested in your money," I explained as I signed every page firmly. "I never have been." On the day before the wedding, I found Mom in the guest room of the house William had bought for us, away from the Thompsons' property. Her eyes were teary as she adjusted my veil. "There's something I need to give you," she said, her voice trembling. "I promised I would only do it when you were really ready." From the depths of her old suitcase, Mom pulled out an envelope, yellowed by time. My full name, Emma. Sarah Brooks, was written in handwriting I had never seen before. "It's from your dad." My stomach dropped. David Brooks had died when I was just 3. Mom always said it was a car accident. His photos were scarce in our house, and Mom always avoided the subject. "But the words caught in my throat. "Read the letter, Emma. There's so much you don't know." With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. The letter was dated 2 weeks ago. "Dear Emma, if you're reading this, it means the time has finally come for the truce. I didn't die in that accident 24 years ago. I faked my own death to protect you and your mother from powerful enemies who threatened our family after they discovered my plan to expose their corrupt practices." The banquet hall shone in shades of blue and silver. 200 guests, most of them strangers to me, people from the Thompson social and business circle, filled the room. William waited at the altar, his genuine smile the only anchor amidst the whirlwind forming in my mind. Ever since the letter the night before, my world had been turned upside down. David Brooks, my father, was not only alive, but had secretly built an empire even bigger than the Thompsons, operating in the shadows so as not to draw attention from old enemies. The letter revealed that I, unknowingly, was the heir to a fortune that made the Thompsons' wealth look modest. Even more shocking, Brooks Holdings, my father's company, secretly owned 51% of the shares in Thompson Enterprises. He had slowly bought them through various subsidiaries over 2 decades, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal the truth. Mom walked beside me down the corridor, gripping my arm as if she could read my thoughts. "Your dad is going to be here today," she whispered. "He promised." The sudden commotion at the entrance confirmed her words. A gray-haired man with eyes identical to mine walked in, flanked by a group of security guards. Robert Thompson paled at the very first row. The ceremony halted. William looked at the commotion confused. I walked up to him and took his hands. "William, that man is my father. David Brooks is alive." Robert Thompson's eyes widened in recognition. "Brooks? Impossible!" My father calmly walked up to the altar. "Robert, long time no see. I see you're about to celebrate your son's wedding to my daughter. What an extraordinary coincidence, don't you think? Almost as if fate were collecting on an old debt." The guests watched in awe as the scene unfolded. David Brooks maintained a calm, almost serene demeanor, while Robert Thompson looked like a cornered animal. William stayed by my side, his hand gripping mine tightly, his eyes switching between his dad and the man I had just discovered was my biological father. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting this beautiful moment," my dad began, his voice strong and echoing through the hall. "I didn't mean to put on a show, but there are truths that need to come out before my only daughter officially joins this family." Robert stepped forward, fists clenched. "This is outrageous. Get your guards." "Your guards aren't coming, Robert," my dad replied calmly. "Many of them have worked for me for years, just like a good chunk of your own trusted staff." Robert's face twisted in shock. He looked around, noticing that the men in suits he once considered loyal were now standing inert. "William," I turned to my fiancé, "I need to explain what's going on." "Emma, who is this man really?" he asked, confusion written all over his face. "As you just found out, I'm David Brooks," my father said as he approached, extending his hand toward William. "Emma's dad, and from what I've learned over the years, you're an honorable man, different from your father." "Don't believe that lie," Robert shouted. "This man is an impostor, a criminal." Before Robert could continue, I grabbed the pen again. "I have signatures, dates, documents," my dad said, pulling a flash drive out of his jacket pocket, "including recordings of the order you gave to permanently take care of the Brooks problem. The difference is, Now I don't just plan to hand this over to the justice system. I'm going public with every detail, every maneuver, every penny misappropriated. Tears streamed down my face as everything began to click. My modest childhood, the constant moves, Mom's silence about the past, it was all meant to keep us safe. To protect Emma and Sarah, I faked my death, my dad continued. I assumed a new identity, built my empire in the shadows, all while waiting for the right moment to come back. And the irony, Robert, is that our families are about to unite just as I finally reveal the truth. An elegant woman, whom I recognized as William's mother, stepped up to Robert, her eyes filled with horror. Is it true, Robert? You tried to have this man and his family killed? Elizabeth, don't be naive, Robert attempted to compose himself. These are outrageous accusations without proof. My father gave a sad smile. The proof is right here, Elizabeth. And there's more. Your husband not only tried to eliminate us, but he continued his fraudulent practices. Over the past 20 years, I secretly redirected my resources to buy shares in Thomson Enterprises through multiple shell companies. Brooks Holdings now holds 51% of the control of the company that bears your name, Robert. A sudden murmur rippled through the guests. Several executives from Thomson Enterprises began whispering frantically. Journalists were already furiously typing away on their smartphones. Impossible, Robert shouted. I would have crushed any hostile takeover attempt. Hostile takeover? My father interjected. Of course. That's why I developed a meticulous strategy over the past 2 decades. Small acquisitions through seemingly unrelated companies. And now, ironically enough, my daughter is marrying your son, legally uniting what was already connected in the corporate world. William returned to my side, taking my hands again. His eyes reflected understanding and not anger. Emma, did you know all this? He asked softly. I only found out yesterday, I replied. The letter Mom gave me, it was from my dad, telling me he was alive and explaining everything. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Robert, now visibly shaken, looked for support in a nearby chair. Robert Thomson, my dad said with renewed authority, as the majority shareholder of Thomson Enterprises and the president of the Brooks Holdings Board, I demand your immediate resignation as CEO, effective right now. The days following the aborted wedding were a whirlwind of revelations, headlines, and transformations. We decided to postpone the ceremony for a few weeks, giving William time to process all the information about his father and allowing us to reorganize the event in a more intimate, authentic way. Robert Thompson's downfall was spectacular and ruthless. The day after our confrontation, the country's top newspapers were splashed with the details of the charges. Strategically, my dad didn't just hand over the evidence to the authorities. He also shared it with a select group of investigative journalists. His plan ensured that nothing would be hushed up or forgotten. I don't just want legal justice, my dad explained, as we had breakfast in what had become our temporary family refuge. I want historical justice. I want his name to be remembered for what it really stands for. Executives at Thomson Enterprises quickly called an extraordinary board meeting. With 51% of the shares and the overwhelming evidence against Robert, the decision was unanimous: accept his resignation and start a complete audit to assess the full extent of the damage. William was visibly hurting. Discovering that his father was responsible for so many atrocities had deeply shaken his trust. I grew up admiring him, he confessed one night as we strolled through the garden. I always thought his coldness was just part of being a successful businessman. I never imagined that behind that facade was someone capable of ordering the death of a family. People aren't usually all good or all bad, William, I said, holding his hand. Your dad made terrible choices, but that doesn't define who you are. William's mother, Elizabeth, proved to be surprisingly strong throughout the crisis. After the initial shock, she herself filed for divorce and launched an audit of the family's charity projects, many of which had served as a front for Robert's fraudulent operations. I always suspected something wasn't right, she confided to me over lunch. But Robert was a master at hiding the truth, even from those closest to him. And when you grow up in families like ours, Emma, You learn pretty quickly not to ask too many questions. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Robert was formally indicted for corporate fraud, tax evasion, attempted homicide, and several other crimes. Images of him being escorted by the police, handcuffed and head down, flooded every news channel. That very night, William received a handwritten letter from his father from prison. He hesitated before opening it, his fingers trembling. Slightly. "You don't have to read it now," I suggested. "Or maybe never if you'd rather." "I need to know what he has to say," William replied, tearing open the envelope. The letter was surprisingly short. Robert didn't deny his actions or ask for forgiveness. He just acknowledged that William deserved an explanation. He confessed that his obsession with power and money had started early when his own father threatened to disinherit him. Every subsequent action was fueled by the fear of losing everything, a downward spiral that drove him to make increasingly desperate decisions. "He says he doesn't expect my forgiveness," William commented, folding the letter. "He just wants me to know that he never doubted my character, and that knowing that makes him feel even worse about himself." That confession, though not enough to fix everything, offered William something he desperately needed, a starting point to understand how his father had turned into the man he was. At the headquarters of Thompson Enterprises, employees faced days of uncertainty. My dad and William temporarily took charge, assuring everyone that no honest worker would be punished for Robert's crimes. The company was built on the hard work of thousands of such people, William declared in his first speech as interim CEO. "I won't let the legacy of these people be destroyed by the actions of one single individual, even if that person is my own father." The investigation uncovered even deeper branches of Robert's corruption: bribery of public officials, falsified financial results, and pressure on small business owners to sell their properties at ridiculously low prices. Each new discovery confirmed just how far he had gone in building his empire. "How did he manage to hide all of this for so long?" I asked my dad over dinner. "People like Robert thrive because they count on the silence of those who are afraid and the complicity of those who can be bought," he replied. "But mostly because they project such an impeccable public image that it's hard to believe they're capable of these acts." 6 months after the scandal, William and I finally went through with our wedding. It was a simple ceremony in the garden of the house we bought together, with only close family and a few dear friends. My students even came with hand-drawn pictures and cards, bringing tears to my eyes. The day after the wedding, we faced our first big decision as a couple, the future of the companies that were now under our joint control. "We can't just keep things the way they are," William argued while we pored over reports in our home library. "Thompson Enterprises needs a complete overhaul, not only in leadership, but in its core values." "I agree," I replied, studying the documents. "And Brooks Holdings also needs to step out of the shadows. My dad built a powerful empire operating so discreetly, almost secretively. That doesn't match with the transparency we want to promote." Our plan was ambitious: merge the two companies into a new entity, Brooks Thompson Global, a corporation that kept both groups' legitimate businesses running, but with a new ethical code, sustainable practices, and a strong social commitment. Though my dad was initially hesitant about the merger, he eventually supported our vision. "You two represent a new generation with new values," he acknowledged. "My approach was shaped by fear and the need to survive. You have the opportunity to build something rooted in transparency." We implemented radical changes in the first few months. We hired independent auditors to review every division, contract, and partnership. We established a new, diverse board of directors that included experts in business ethics, sustainability, and employee representatives. We even set up protected reporting channels so that any questionable practices could be reported without fear of retaliation. "Our biggest challenge will be cultural," William noted during a meeting with top executives. "We're not just changing rules and processes. We're trying to transform the mindset of an entire organization that for decades operated on very different principles." As expected, we faced resistance. Old-time executives, used to Robert's methods, saw our initiatives as naive and harmful to profits. Some resigned voluntarily. Others were asked to leave when it became clear they wouldn't adapt to the new philosophy. "We're not willing to sacrifice our principles for short-term gains," I declared firmly during a tense meeting with shareholders. "If that means slower growth at first, we're ready for that commitment." Surprisingly, the positive results started showing up sooner than we expected. Our transparent approach attracted new talents excited about the opportunity to work for a truly ethical company. Clients and partners, tired of the questionable business practices in the market, started gravitating toward us. One of the projects I was most proud of was transforming properties that Robert had illegally acquired. Instead of simply selling them for a profit, we worked with the affected communities to turn them into spaces that met local needs: schools, community centers, affordable housing. This building was supposed to be a luxury office skyscraper, William explained as we visited one of the projects in progress. Now it's going to be an educational center for low-income children, with full scholarships and a mentorship program. Amid all these changes, I didn't completely give up teaching. I scaled back my hours a bit, but still kept a few classes. Teaching kids had always been my passion, and I wasn't ready to let that go despite my new responsibilities. "How do you manage everything?" a reporter asked during an interview about our educational initiatives. "With balance, clear priorities, and an excellent team," I replied sincerely. Being a leader doesn't mean doing everything on your own. It means making sure that talented people have the resources and autonomy to reach their full potential. After a year of intense work, Brooks Thompson Global received its first Corporate Responsibility Award, recognizing our innovative governance approach and social commitment. William and I took the stage together to accept it. "This recognition belongs to every employee who joined us on this journey," William said into the microphone, "and also to those who, even unknowingly, inspired us to create something different. The communities we serve, the students who teach us as much as we teach them, and yes, even those who showed us exactly what we never want to be." My parents' wedding took place on a sunny spring afternoon, exactly 20 years after their forced separation. The ceremony, held in the garden of the house we bought for them, was simple and moving. My mom, radiant in a light blue dress, looked as if she'd been given a new lease on life. My dad, as nervous as a teenager, couldn't take his eyes off her. "We waited far too long for this moment," he said during his vows. "Every day apart from you and Emma was a necessary but painful trial. I promise we won't waste another second." Watching them dance together at the reception filled me with a sense of wholeness I had never felt before. Throughout my adult life, I had carried an emptiness from the lack of a father, a shadow that I never fully understood. Now, seeing them together, I realized that a part of me had finally found peace. William, by my side, squeezed my hand. They deserved this happiness after everything they sacrificed. "Yes," I agreed, wiping away a tear. 20 years is too long to be separated from the ones you love. Our own family was growing too. 3 months after my parents' wedding, I found out I was pregnant. The news brought a wave of joy to all of us, especially my parents, who were eager to make up for lost time as grandparents. "Do you think it'll be a boy or a girl?" my mom speculated as we prepared the baby's room. "We decided not to find out," I replied, arranging the children's books on the shelf. Some surprises in life are worth waiting for. William dove headfirst into preparing for the baby's arrival. Between corporate meetings and business trips, he found time to put together furniture, research the best baby products, and even attend first-time parenting classes. "I never thought I'd see the day when my son was so involved with diapers and baby bottles," Elizabeth commented, who had become a constant, loving presence in our lives after divorcing Robert. Elizabeth's transformation pleasantly surprised me. Freed from an oppressive marriage, she rediscovered her voice and passions. She took up painting again, a hobby she had abandoned during the early years with Robert, and became actively involved in social causes. "It's weird," she once confided, "I spent decades thinking that my only role was to be the perfect wife for Robert Thompson. Now at 60, I'm discovering who I really am." Even more surprising was the gradual change in Robert. After serving 8 months in a medium-security federal prison, he started sending letters regularly to William. Initially formal and distant, the letters gradually became more reflective and personal over time. "He's been going to therapy in prison," William shared after receiving the tense letter. "He says he's trying to understand how he became the man he is, and for the first time, he seems genuinely remorseful." I hesitated for a moment before responding. The damage Robert did was extensive and deep. My family had been separated for 2 decades because of his actions. Yet I couldn't ignore the sincerity in William's eyes when he talked about his father's transformation. "Do you really believe he can change?" William thought for a long while. "I'm not sure if he can undo what he did or completely erase who he was, but I do believe he's genuinely trying to be better now." 3 years after his imprisonment, Robert qualified for a monitored parole program with electronic tracking. William consulted with the entire family before deciding to support his plea. Surprisingly, my parents didn't oppose it. "Holding on to hatred is too heavy a burden to carry for the rest of your life," my dad explained. "I don't forget what he did, but I also don't want my granddaughter growing up in an environment of everlasting resentment." The first meeting between Robert and our daughter Sophie took place under my careful supervision. I watched nervously as he, now visibly aged and fragile, held her tiny hands. "Hi, Sophie," he said softly. "I'm your Robert." He looked at me, seeking my approval before calling himself Grandpa. I gave a slight nod, recognizing his effort to respect our boundaries. Sophie, with her childlike curiosity, asked why he wore that funny bracelet on his ankle. Robert glanced at William, unsure of what to say. "It's because he made mistakes, sweetie," William explained simply, "and now he's learning how to fix them." Reintegrating Robert into our family life was slow and cautious. He joined us for occasional lunches, always showing respectful and composed behavior, so different from the arrogant posture he once displayed. At one of those gatherings, after Sophie had gone off to play, Robert finally found the courage to speak to my parents. "David, Sarah, I know words aren't enough," he began, his voice choking up. "But I need to say that I'm truly sorry for everything I did to you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know." A heavy silence filled the room. My dad, after what felt like an eternity, reached out his hand. "I don't forget the past, Robert," he said firmly. "But I do acknowledge the man you're trying to become. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this." 5 years passed since the turning point in our lives. Brooks Thompson Global had thrived beyond expectations, becoming a benchmark for ethical and sustainable corporate practices. William took over as CEO, implementing his vision of doing business that benefited both shareholders and society. For me, I found my own balance. 3 days a week, I continued teaching at the same school, now with significantly improved resources thanks to the anonymous donations we regularly organized. On the other 2 days, I oversaw the Sarah Brooks Foundation, named in honor of my mom, dedicated to supporting teachers and schools in underprivileged communities. How does it feel to be both a teacher and one of the most powerful women in the corporate world? A journalist asked during an interview for a business magazine. "I don't see any contradiction between the 2 roles," I answered sincerely. "Both involve empowering people, creating environments where they can thrive, and building something meaningful for the future." Sophie, now 4 years old, often accompanied me to school. Watching her interact with my students, sharing toys and books, filled my heart with indescribable joy. Her little brother David, who was only 7 months old, usually stayed with my mom on those days. My parents were making the most of their second chance. They traveled frequently, making up for the decades of separation with new shared experiences. My dad, though officially retired from business, kept busy writing his memoirs and mentoring young entrepreneurs. "It's never too late to start over," he used to say. "I spent 20 years planning revenge. Now I realize that the happiest moments in my life came after I decided to focus on rebuilding rather than on retribution." Robert Thompson continued his path of redemption. After serving 5 years, he was granted full parole with the condition of doing community service. In a surprising turn, he chose to devote his time to a financial rehabilitation program for ex-detainees, helping them understand basic finances and ethical entrepreneurship. "I never thought I'd see my dad ending up teaching about honesty in business," William remarked one evening, with a mix of irony and admiration. "People can change when they face the consequences of their choices," I replied. "Some need to lose everything to finally value what truly matters." Our home became a hub for frequent family gatherings where generations met and shared stories. At one such dinner, Sophie innocently asked how William and I had met. "Your dad spilled coffee on my tests," I recalled with a smile directed at William. "It was the clumsiest mishap ever." "That was the best clumsy decision of my life," he answered, squeezing my hand across the table. Robert, who was watching the scene quietly, murmured, "It's amazing how seemingly random encounters can completely change the course of our lives." Elizabeth, seated by his side, as a friend, they never rekindled a romance, but maintained a cordial relationship focused on the grandchildren, nodded thoughtfully. Back in my home office, I kept framed on the wall the first page of that prenup. I signed that day at the Thompson mansion, not as a bitter reminder, but as a symbol of how appearances can be deceiving. Back then it seemed like a humiliation. Today, it represented the beginning of an extraordinary journey. The Sarah Brooks Foundation celebrated its 4th anniversary with the opening of our 10th model school in an underprivileged neighborhood. The project offered fair salaries to teachers, innovative educational resources, and community development programs for everyone involved. "This is my true legacy," I declared during the opening ceremony. "Not the corporate buildings or the stocks, but every child who finds a path here to make their dreams come true." William, always by my side during these moments, added, "And every teacher who rediscovers their passion for teaching when they finally receive the respect and resources they deserve." At the end of the day, we walked together through the empty corridors of the new school. The colorful classrooms, well-equipped library, and modern labs awaited the students who would arrive the next morning. "You know what I sometimes think?" I commented, stopping in front of a mural painted by local residents. "That all the pain and separation somehow brought us here. It allowed us to create something we never would have imagined." William wrapped his arm around my shoulders and said, "I guess that's what turning wounds into wisdom is all about. Using even the most painful experiences as a foundation to build something beautiful." We left hand in hand for the courtyard, where the sunset cast long shadows. Tomorrow would be another day of balancing between classrooms and boardrooms, between children's stories and financial reports. A life I never planned, but now couldn't imagine any other way. "Ready to go home?" William asked. "Yes," I replied, taking one last look at the building that symbolized everything we believed in. "I'm ready." Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this.